Warning. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night, or whatever you are. Welcome. Episode number 14 of Whispered Insights. Thank you again for being here. We had great conversation so far. We're going to continue with that as we go forward. Very brief announcement before we go anywhere. The next couple shows are going to be spectacular. Next week, we have Liz Miller coming back to do the discussion on vendor lock-in, the one that got thwarted by technology not being cooperated with me. And the week after that, we have Rafaela Camera, who's going to come and talk to us about transmedia. Her role was working with Epic Games on the transmedia and the metaverse and TikTok and all those things. And we're going to have a great conversation about how the world goes transmedia, what is transmedia and all that. And after that, we are taking a brief break for Thanksgiving on the 28th. And we're back with a couple more shows in December before wrapping up for the year. So, and we have some great things coming in December and January as well. Stay tuned while I confirm them. But this has been a really fun show to do, and we'll continue to do it that way. And to do that, my guest today, who's been here a couple times and needs no introduction because she's incredible, awesome, best person to talk about things that people don't want to talk about. Dr. Lauren Vargas, PhD.
Hey there.
Hey, Doc. What's up, Doc? I always wanted to say that. That is so awesome. Never had the chance. Anyways, thanks for being here once again. Are you ready for a great chat?
I'm always ready for a great chat.
Okay. So today, we're going to breach the subject of learning. Not education, not teaching, but learning, It's been said that learning is a perpetual endeavor of the human mind, that we always try to learn and become better. We always try to do better, learn more, blah, blah, blah. We're going to avoid things like fail fast and, things like that. But we can talk about learn as you go and improve as you go and all that stuff. So the reason that I chose you for this topic, if you choose to take this mission, is twofold. Number one, you have a long history of actually incorporating learning into everything you do as you go through the world. And number two, and more important, you have a fucking PhD, which I could never, for the love of God, do. But that means that you know about learning. And you always, spouting about learning and talking about learning. So let's start with a simple question. What's learning to you?
Learning is not just taking in information, not just absorbing information, but really making sense of information and applying it to the things I think and do every day.
So it's a way for you to improve who you are in the world and the things you do in the world.
All the time.
Okay. Can anybody learn?
Of course. Yes.
No.
It takes energy. Well, yeah, anybody can do it, whether they actually do it.
Okay, so what happens if you don't learn? Let's say that you are, I don't know, a 56-year-old Argentinian who lives in the States and doesn't really believe in learning.
Oh.
What happens if you don't learn?
Well, what happens if you don't learn? Well,
seriously. I mean, you can say it. We have a warning before the show. You can say it.
That the idealist in me would like to say, you're destined to fail. But I've seen so many people walk through life without learning and, still getting light years ahead of the people that are doing the hard work. So that might be a little bit of a pessimistic view.
So I mean, I don't think it's pessimistic. I think it's right. I think the learning and intuition are two very different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people you're describing are very intuitive people, but not really, learning type of people. Would that be a first statement?
I think there's a mix, right? I think that I think intuition is incredibly valuable, and that, I think learning is something that is intentional. It's meant to be intentional. So if you make the choice not to learn and you don't have like a specific path forward or some type of destination, then you might not see the benefit from that.
Okay. Now, since I'm picking up cues from the environment, and I see this book behind you called Introvert Doodle,
Yes,
and I know that you and I are introvert people.
very much.
How does learning overlap with being an introvert or an extrovert or anything like that? I'm just trying to set the background here for like the second part of the conversation. So all these stupid minor questions have a role, I promise,
I think introverts are very good at observing the world around them and taking in subtle signals and learning not just from, text. It's having a whole sensory experience. And I think that's part of a valuable learning or data information practice.
Yeah. Look at that comment that Brent just put on screen. I absolutely love this thing, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
if I understand this correctly, and Pierre, thanks for the comment, and do correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if I understand this correctly, means that without learning, you don't have a long-term gain, you just have a short-term result.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's take learning back into the enterprise now, right? You've done many projects, as I have done many projects. I know because I worked with you before, you're very good at pushing education and training and learning as part of the project. You're better than I am at keeping it in there. I was raised as a consultant, so like the first thing that goes when the bunches get tired is obviously training and education and learning. And as much as you want to train your people on the job, you don't care if they do learn or not, as long as you can charge more for them. So how do you you're welcome, Pierre. How do you actually bring learning into a corporate environment? And this is something that you've done through your whole career. So this is the part where it gets an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think so. I think you've talked on this show before about the concept of working out loud, and I have used that as a fundamental building block of all of my community engagement, all of my both internal and external engagement. So whether we're talking about employee engagement, corporate, communications, to those external communications, whether it's community or social media, etc., it's always been grounded with a work out loud foundation, meaning myself and my team members and the people I work with really trying to design a program where we are showing our work. We're showing how we're thinking, we're showing what we're doing, we're showcasing how we did XYZ. And it's with the hopes that people will engage with us and either become more receiving or more open to a specific project. It could be, seeding the framework for making a certain case or investment, but also to bring people along on that journey with us. And I know that kind of saying gets talked about a lot, but just throwing things out there from we created a specific learning module or something like that. Putting information out there doesn't equate to learning. It's taking a more active experience. So working with people to help make sense of the information. So it's not just me or my team members regurgitating what we're doing, what we're thinking, how we're acting, what we're practicing, but how are we making sense of it once we've put it out, into the arena, and making that almost, we had content calendars for that, for like the working out loud piece, which I know is kind of may seem a little bit odd, but it was part of how do we make this learning snackable? How do we do it by stealth rather than saying we're going to force feed you this particular, learning set, but more of the learn by doing and the learn by sense making.
But doesn't it take a certain type of person to be able to receive that teaching education that you do and learn from it, right?
Well, yeah. And you also have to know that it's going to come in different forms, and it's not always going to be the right time to get that information, in front of somebody for it to be absorbed. So finding different methods to get, to get that information across, making sure that you've got some type of like different types of seasons of change or cycles of learning, trying to keep things fresh, trying to, also, think about how we move out of just the mental or cerebral activities to the learning by actually like acting, playing, working with, with tangible elements.
So that sounds a lot like education theory at this point, more than just anything that you do that value delivering part of the organizational experience, right?
No,
What do you mean
definitely
no?
not.
Yeah, Jean Piaget said basically make learning fun, and people will learn.
Yeah.
It's education theory. It's not like oh, at the corporate level we have to consider this or that or whatever. Sorry about that. People want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them. They don't understand. So anyway,
But
but a certain level, what you're talking about is like finding ways for people to learn and puts the burden on you, not on the learner.
oh, well, I think we have a responsibility to model the behavior that we seek. And so just as hard as I'm working to put this stuff out there, I'm also on the receiving end, right? Like I'm also looking for those people that are putting that information out into the round, and I'm trying to learn on an active basis. But it's you can't force people to learn, but you can put it out there. And if they're receptive to it, they're receptive to it. And you just have to be able to either let it go or focus on the key individuals or the key formats and keep asking what's working, what's not working, and how do we find ways to make it, palatable.
And that's where you and your team learn in return for the education that you impart.
Right.
So learning is a two-way street.
Definitely.
No, don't say definitely.
No?
Don't say definitely. This is not common sense. Seriously, it's not. A lot of people believe in the power of education and training and teaching, but not in the power of learning in return. You can, especially in corporate America, you can see many people doing things because they're trying to impart wisdom or whatever, but not getting something in return.
It's
going
learning
back to
theater. It's learning. That's learning theater. It's performative learning.
I love that term, learning theater. Thank you. I'm gonna use that. But that's true. But that's what a lot of people do. You see this, especially with charlatans, right? Which is a pretty recurring theme in my show. Charlatans of platitudes, people that don't know shit and they just spout sound bites like they know what they're talking about. They expect everybody to repeat the sound bites, but they don't learn anything. All they do is they go and find the next sound bite to sound like an expert and the next iteration, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that comment, by the way, Brian. Learning theater, lots of that has been going on forever, and actually, that's most of what we see is learning theater, and that guides past learning, right?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, so let's take that one step further now, which is kind of where I want to go with all this stuff. Right? We talk about learning styles, we talk about learning both ways. We talk about all this, but there's this thing coming in the world called AI. Have you heard of it?
Something like that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that. And machine, quote unquote, machine learning. So how do we take everything that you describe and begin to apply that into, and this is where I wanted to go with the show, into decision making for the AI era? How do how do you do that?
I think you have to. Well, no, what?
No, yeah, I was just giving you the time, but anything that you have is fine. I don't have the answer. I'm not trying to get something that I know and put you there. I'm just trying to find out, the two of us in this conversation, what can we take for learning and apply to AI and machine learning so that machines can actually learn versus find patterns and repeating, which is not really truly learning. So.
Okay, but I think to do that, and this might not be answering your question, but I almost feel like we have to take a step back because we're feeding the beast, right? We're feeding, yeah. Right? So if we as human beings don't even know how to consistently learn and have constructive dialogue and manage conflict, how are we, if we don't do that outside of the AI sphere, then whatever we're feeding into it is a reflection of those behaviors, those habits. So can we truly actually learn in the AI era?
Can we?
I think it's going to take some work. I think it takes people that think that critical thinking is an actual skill and that we have to, model constructive dialogue. And I think that's even tougher. Like, if you're just conversing, with an AI, there are certain parameters in place. Like you are learning the skills in which to get the information that you want retrieved. Humans aren't necessarily like that. There's a more nuanced conversation to that learning in that conversation. So I think we have to do a lot of work outside of our digital realms so that we can be better in the digital spaces. We can get better at processing the information. We can get better at feeding the different systems. We can get better at thinking about the different models that we want that we want to build.
But isn't that what the computer is supposed to do by itself? Like, the whole concept of AI is like, don't laugh.
No.
Isn't the whole concept of AI that computers are going to take over and do everything, make decisions on their own independently, become sentient and, eat us all or whatever?
Boy, that's an easy way out, because then we don't have to worry about those intended and unintended consequences, because it's just going to happen to us, right?
Oh, seriously, that's an easy way out. I love that statement. That's an easy way. So everything that we're doing is an easy way out to like let the computers take it. But what if in that idea computers cannot take over because computers are stupid enough that they can never learn?
Okay.
What if computers cannot learn? What's the question? That's good. What if computers cannot really learn?
I don't think they can really learn.
Okay, then how can computers become sentient and take over?
I don't think they can become sentient and take over.
Well, you kind of ruining the show now. There's nothing left to talk
about. I think that people that just automatically, think in that direction, I think that's pure fantasy and conjecture right now. And I think it's about taking responsibility for what we are doing, what we are feeding, how we are communicating and collaborating and being in community with other human beings. And I think that if we're just saying and kind of, throwing it over the wall and just saying, well, that's tomorrow's problem, or it doesnn't matter, they're all going to all these machines are going to rise up and take over. That's giving up. That's not taking responsibility. That's not taking agency over the types of preferred futures that we should be collectively imagining.
Okay. So then what do we do instead?
Instead of
giving up and saying computers will take over, we're going to take the easy way out and not do anything.
I think it's what you and I have talked about before on the show about and in previous conversations. It's about taking responsibility over what data am I putting out in the world? How am I processing that data? I think we need to get better at the data, understanding the data we're ingesting individually, the data that we are, spewing out there, both individually and collectively. And I don't think that the majority of people, let's just take, just an enterprise. The majority of the enterprise doesn't understand what's going on, just in the internal, on the internal side. We're putting so much faith into people, a small amount of people that have an understanding of data and are building the models, rather than how do we take a more regenerative approach and start ensuring that we're not just building digital literacy skills, but data literacy skills, so that everybody can take a more active approach to what is happening and why it's happening.
But that involves us taking control of the process of AI versus just being subject to it.
Correct. Once again, it's responsibility and agency. We can't wait for somebody to save us. We have to, do our own work.
Okay. And how do we do that? This is the part that I wanted to get in the show. And the reason you're here is because you're smart enough to have this conversation in real life, in real time. I mean, how do we change the process of adopting AI so we actually turn it into like a true learning experience for the computer and for us? That's a key question that I wanted to get to.
Well, okay, this might be like a little bit of one thing that I've always done in my practice is I've always turned to fiction to help people think about what could be. And if you were to wake up in that world, what would you need to prepare for? Or what would make this world even possible? So I've always leaned on fiction to help illustrate an issue so that it helps us. Well, one, it can help immerse people into another reality or another potential future that they don't have necessarily, or what they might not think that they have an immediate stake or investment. And I think by having these what if conversations, what if this happened? What would we need to have from a readiness perspective? I do think it makes people more accepting into what information are they taking in the real world, and what are they doing to really focus their energies and take more of an active stance. So to your point, are computers going to take over the world? I don't think so, but reading stories about maybe how we got there and then asking the what if questions. Well, what if that did happen? What would we do? How would we do things differently? What were those signals of change that helped us get there? Well, then now from a learning perspective in the present, what can I be looking out for? What different perspectives do I need to start to take in to better understand how or if this future might come about?
By the way, those are two great comments that Brent just put in there. If you want to put them on screen to help,
the computers
the conversation.
Don't care. People care.
Yeah, computers don't care. They really, they don't care. They don't care to learn what they're going to learn. But so my statement for close to forever is being computers will never be able to take over the world, because going back to the question I asked you before, they lack intuition. Intuition is a huge part of learning. You cannot learn without intuition, right? If you follow a logical path from A through B, there's going to be parts where it requires a leap of faith or some intuition to go forward.
Yeah,
and computers
I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Right? Computers cannot do that. You cannot say to the computer, oh, if you get to a point where there's not enough information, then make it up or whatever, because that's how we ended up with LLMs and hallucinations. They make it up and see how it is. There was many cases of that. So with that intuition, with that then learning, then what you were saying is what becomes critical for organizations as the next step. How do we actually do the learning for the computers, and how do we tell them where to go next? Not as a learning mechanism, but as a way to actually improve what they do. I mean, did I understand what you said, or did I just state it properly?
Yeah, you did. Right? Yeah.
So then, going back to where we started, how does learning apply to that process inside the organization? I mean, what is it that the organization needs to do as an entity or as a group of people, like you were talking about, to quote unquote learn enough to tell the computers, teach the computers what they need to do next? That's that to me is the crux of the question for the next decade for any organization.
Well, I do think it comes down to making the implicit explicit, because we're really, really bad at showing our work. So if we're going to train these computers, then we need to be able to understand how our own method of showing that work looks like, and how we're going through the process of learning, taking 2 steps back, 1 step forward. What does that actually look like? And so we have to narrate what that looks like. We have to showcase what that looks like. And I think if we get better at putting that out there, then we can start to see the patterns, and that can help us shape our interaction. So
that's a great statement, because I mean, basically what we're saying is like, and it sounds like I'm leading you towards something, but I'm really just having a conversation, trying to understand what you're saying, because you have more experience in this than I do. More learning on this than I do. Which is how computers and people learn. So what you're saying is like, we need to learn how to learn better, so we can teach computers how to do better. Is that right?
Yes, we have to learn how to work out loud better. We have to learn how to learn out loud better. Like, both have to happen in tandem.
Yeah. Every time you say, by the way, every time you say work out loud, that's something that Alan Bergson has been saying forever. I know you have been doing the same, but like Alan Bergson, almost every conversation I have with Alan ends up with some form of like, work out loud and like show your work.
I'm pretty sure if you asked anybody that I've ever worked with, they would say, "Oh my gosh, we'll equate work out loud to L."
I know that because I work with you and I work with Alan, but it's just like this is something that But that's a great comment, also, Brent. I mean, most people are trying not to show their work, right? But the thing is like, I mean, the thing is like, I never believe in showing your work. I mean, I'm an introvert, highly intuitive person. I don't have a process that I could explain. This is what makes it almost impossible for people to work with me on a team or whatever. It's like I can't explain the process. It's just there, whatever it is. My brain works it out, and then it tells me what to say, and it sounds like a magnificent lesson learned that it actually is intuition at best, right? So how do we take someone like me and make him part of both the learning within the organization and the teaching to the computers then? Or can we?
I think you can. So let's talk about you. So when you are working,
there you go.
Come on.
This feels like a first date so much right now. Let's talk about you. Tell me your life story.
Okay, yeah. But I don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not sitting there and saying that, and I'm not teaching people or guiding people to do this either. But I'm not sitting there and saying, okay, every single thing that's going on in my head right now, I'm going to put out there. Like, no. I am definitely working through the process before I'm showcasing what that looks like. And I think you do the exact same thing. You do that in your provocations on LinkedIn. You do that in your writing. And so it might not, we all have different speeds in which we both process and work out loud, and we share those learnings out loud. But I think you are definitely one that kind of, I would say that you do show that you've got some type of like progress in your thinking, because you're able to throw something out there and, have a conversation about it and, make some type of pivot or change or show that evolution of thought. And you're not afraid of that. Yeah. But most people are afraid of having that type of conflict, of being able to show if there is any change in thinking, because that might show that we're either, really flaky, or that we didn't grasp the subject, or that we were faking it till we were making it, or fill in the blank with your type of fear.
Okay. And that's basically the comments that Brent has been putting out there, that you're welcome to share them in public as well, Brent. Like, most people don't want to show their work. That they do, and some people don't even want to show their work because they don't do their work. So why would you show something that you don't do, right?
Exactly. This and don't get me wrong. When I've gone through and in both corporate and in both commercial, government, and even in the cultural sector work, the thing that I get resistance to this all the time, because there is that fear of, and I have this fear too of like, I'm not good enough. Or I haven't actually been doing what I should have been doing. And I'm not saying just me, but like the other people that I work with, there are a lot of different fears. And there's the fear of just kind of getting by and getting away with it. And by working out loud, learning out loud, it puts everything on display and requires a huge amount of vulnerability. And when you take the amount of energy that is required of that, plus the energy that's required for learning something new, that active learning, it's no wonder that people are just like tapped out. Like, I'm done. Like, I can't hold space for this. And I especially think in various types of temperatures, environments, climates that we're facing right now, that fatigue, that level of energy and stress just gets amplified. And we just say, you know what? I'm only taking in the information I want to take in. I'm maybe not even taking any information in, and I'm doom scrolling, and I'm just numbing it all out. So I think learning and education have a pretty big challenge in front of them as things get more easier to distill into these, colorless, flavorless, tidbits.
So
Sorry, that was a bit of a rant.
No, I look, I totally agree with what you said. I'm just trying to figure, what the next question makes sense or not. But like, then we don't have the problem of teaching computers. We have the problem of teaching the people who teach the computers.
Oh, yeah. I have said the same thing probably on repeat for every single project I have taken on. And I say we don't have technological problems. We don't have technical problems. We have people problems. It comes down to communication and collaboration. And until we solve those, we're not making any progress.
See, I keep saying that we don't have problems. We have intractable problems that are multi-generational in resolution, and the technology is way surpassed the need for the technology as a resolution. But we need to actually take care of people actually having longer-term view of life. I mean, I mean, it's a nice tangent to go into for a few minutes, which is like what you went into, which is like people are checked out and they don't care anymore. They don't want to care anymore. And as a result, they stop learning somehow, or they stop learning with purpose, right?
Yeah, stop learning with purpose.
Yeah. I mean, you always learn. No matter what you do, you always learn.
You're always taking in information. I don't necessarily think you're learning, but yes.
You're learning. Yeah, the human nature. There's no way you can turn off the method for look, cognition theory. Methods for learning and cognition are incredibly well documented for like hundreds of years. We haven't changed the way we learn. The only change is the way we use technology to amplify or accelerate that learning process. But it's the stupid caveman that put the hand in fire the first time learn not to do it again. You know.
Well, there's that. Yes.
That hasn't changed. You know. I mean, there's actually an aside on it, which is pretty funny. George Lopez, who's an American comedian, for those who don't know him, George Lopez has this bit where he says the difference between an American household and a Latino household is like in the American household, when you see the kid going towards the electrical outlet with a knife, you tell him not to do it. And in the Latino household, it's like, go ahead, see how it feels.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. So, I was in that household.
Yeah, me too. It's like, no, go ahead. Nothing bad is going to happen. Trust me. So.
And I like the comment that was put out there as well, because I think as I've gotten older, the amount of things that I realize that I don't know has definitely created this sense of urgency in me to just keep trying to take as much as I can in, to keep trying to like sense make. Because I think when I was younger, I definitely had a chip on my shoulder. I was definitely going through life like I'm young and invincible. And of course I like know everything because I've, done X. But now I realize, I don't have that kind of young stupidity, and I'm not invincible, and there has to be something of substance behind your words. And so I think that it's created more of a drive in me to continue to branch out and to learn and to figure out and to get more interested in how other people learn, so that I'm not either going on this collective, I don't want to go on this journey alone. I definitely want to sense make with others, because, even being an independent researcher and consultant can be really, really kind of nerve-wracking for me, because after, 20 years working with people, learning with people, and then all of a sudden to be kind of removed from these projects and teams now in a way that I haven't been before, that's even increase that sense of like, okay, I need to learn this. I need to at least know enough to ask good questions or to participate in a conversation.
Okay. So, God, this is like talking to Alan Brooks on all over again. Do you ask any good questions today, right? That's what he always says. But this is the reason I talk to you too, because you guys provide similar but different perspectives. But so how do you get to like, the good questions, asking those good questions to improve or whatever word you want to use learning?
I think it begins by asking people, what are their fears? What are their motivations?
Ooh,
what
human shit.
Yeah, exactly. That's the stuff that you have to start with, because unless you know that, you don't know exactly like how to position, how to package, how to make a connection, most importantly. And you need that to be able to at least gain a spark of interest.
I'm an older white-looking guy, even though I'm not white, but I'm an older white-looking guy, and I'm afraid that like anybody and everything out there is better than me, and I'm not going to say that, because if I say that, I become vulnerable and like fragile. So how do you get my fears out of me?
I do prefer to work with small groups or small cohorts. Or no, it's how do you bring that even in an enterprise environment? How do you bring it into smaller circles and then build? I don't like confidence. I was part of a postdoc called 1 by 1, which was looking at digital skills, and all of us had.
What was the name? I'm sorry, what was the name? I'm sorry, what was the name again?
1 by 1.
One by one. That's right. That's a
And
project you did a few years ago. Yeah.
yeah, and the tagline for that project was like building confidence for like every single museum practitioner or something like that. I can't remember, but I always like really kind of bumped up against confidence because I don't think it required confidence for skill building. It requires courage. And I think that understanding how we tap into that courage, what are the methods in which we're in community that allow for that that level of care, grace, and compassion to be able to learn in the round is incredibly important. And that's a vital skill to build. It's a vital skill to model. It's a vital skill that requires constant evolution.
Okay. So we're getting deep into the human side of shit now. I'm supposed to speak better. My therapist told me not to say shit, to use, there you go. Learning starts with human shit. That's right. Double entendre there for a second, but let's go with it for a while. But I mean, we're going deep into the human stuff, and then how do we do the crossover from human to computers? Because look, I mean, whether you agree with me or don't agree with me, to me, the next 2 decades is going to be organizations, and organization doesn't mean enterprises, means like government institutions, enterprises, educational institutions, everybody, marketplace, workplace, the education place, everything, understanding how to transition from human to computers. There's no other way around it. I mean, get past the hype on AI and LLMs today, right? Still, technology is going to continue to evolve to the point that we're going to have to find a role for technology in what we do, because we are the masters. We are the ones who are on top, and they're the ones who do the work that we tell them to do. So then how do we do the transition from the human stuff that you're describing to computer stuff that is nowhere near related? There's no way you can program a computer to learn. I tell you that for sure. I built a neural network once, and I can tell you that any assumption that is left unsaid becomes useless right away. And there's no way that we can cover all the assumptions and blah, blah, blah. But how do we transition from like humans to technology then to actually imbue certain sense of learning into computers so they can actually, the machine learning and all the shit can actually happen?
I think it's building in the affordances that show where the information is coming from and how it's responding to a various prompt or circumstance. Because right now, that requires a certain level of digital and data literacy that I don't think the average person has. And I think that,
no, you're right, at our age, but our kids were born and raised with technology in a way that we weren't.
Correct. But I still think that there is, do they know how to find if a source is reputable or not? The misinformation and disinformation, I think, is something that we need to, better understand and grapple with. And just because somebody is younger doesn't necessarily mean that they are better at identifying what that looks like. And also going through and hunting for that piece of information, not what is the most convenient or that's top of the search list, or that automatically gets spit out by a prompt. I think one of the biggest fumbles that we've seen is, and there are definitely a lot of really good examples of teachers who have said, rejected, you know what, we're not just banning the technology, we're actually going to revamp our curriculum so that we're teaching how to work with the technology. So it's that human technology relationship. What is that connection? Where do we have that agency? What are we doing to understand how the thing is working and what it's spitting out? And what are we doing to, once we have that information, to then feed that particular beast? And I think that's where, just by kind of turning a blind eye or banning these technologies is not the answer. So it's not teaching machines how to think, it's teaching humans how to think with a machine.
Yeah, but there's something that you said that is actually that is pretty interesting, because it has something to it. You said that just because they were born with technology and digital in their life doesn't mean that they understand what to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. Did you say that right? Or
yeah,
I know I paraphrased what you said, but yeah, okay. And True, it doesn't, but what it does, it removes the fear. And we go back to the previous part of the conversation where you said fear is the basis of everything. So if I'm no longer afraid of technology and digital aspects, then how do you change the learning around there? Now, I mean, I'm not saying that you have the answer. I'm just saying, again, this is a conversation, right? But I love the fact that you said something that we don't often state, which is it's not that people have access to it. It's just that people are fearful of it or not enough to actually give in. And we go back to the concept of vulnerability that I was discussing earlier, that Brent doesn't want to see me be vulnerable, but that's his problem, not mine. I'm going to start crying soon. See what happens. But seriously, I mean, if you remove the fear, does learning still have a place?
Does learning still have a place? What do you mean?
If you remove fear from the equation,
yeah,
do you still need to learn? Do you still need to learn?
Yeah.
Is that too deep? Am I going way too far down into the rabbit hole?
I think there's it's learning and intuition in parallel. It's taking in that new piece of information. It's I burned myself. I made a mistake. What did I take from that? What could I take constructively to then change my actions and build those adaptation muscles. So fear doesn't have to be,
Fear is the basis of learning. There's no cognition without fear.
Ooh.
Shit, I'm a newborn caveman. I'm the only person in the fucking universe right now in my adult mind, and there's a thing of lightning that happened. I'm fearful of it, so then I need to understand what it is, so that if it happens, I know what to do with it. And that shit of lightning that just happened started fire, and now there's 100 of us, and then fire. We don't understand it, but because we don't understand it, we're fearful of it. Then we need to learn what to do with it. This is the basis. Fear is the basis of cognition. I may be wrong on this. There can be somebody who quote me like some cognition theory that tells me that I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain that everything that we do at a corporation it stems from fear. And if fear is the basis for cognition.
I don't disagree that I have definitely seen that a lot of people operate from a basis of fear, but that builds these environments that are not conducive to learning. It's not conducive to courage building. And so
true.
And yeah, so I think you're always fighting that resistance.
So, but if we remove the fear of technology,
can we not work from a place of abundance? That I have X number of skills. You have X number of skills. We've got some overlap, but that's not a zero-sum game. There's enough work in the world for both of us. And oh, by the way, there's probably something that I don't know. And I'd love to dig into that. Could we not work?
What do you know gives you power over me? So then I'm fearful you use that power to overtake me. And then
I know information is power. That's
okay, so I know that we're going in a tautologic circle here, but let's recap for a second. I mean, we got about 15 minutes to get this to a good landing, right? I mean, let's recap this for a second. I mean, my statement and the part that I want to, I think we're discussing in a little bit too deep of a level. It's like we went a little too deep down the rabbit hole, and we got to start finding the cookie and the potion to get back, right? But my statement is like, we need to learn better so we can teach computers better, right? And you said, and I agree with you, that fear is the base. Fear is what actually gets you started in the process of learning. Once you understand the people's fears, then you can actually understand what you need to teach them, so like they can know, and then don't be fearful.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where we are. The question then becomes, if we climb a little bit away up from the rabbit hole into something more manageable for whoever is left listening at this point, So, I mean, is there a way to actually, change this going forward, using to teach technology how to think more like humans without imbuing fear into the technological brain? Is that still too much of a question, or is that a better question to answer?
I think it's a better question to answer. I think.
Okay.
I think we need to build digital literacy into everything that we are doing.
Okay.
And it needs to be a part of every role. And there, I think there's a personal responsibility. I think that there are, different levels of corporate or collective responsibility. So I think that we need to build that in. And I'm not just talking like training for like how to recognize a phishing email or something like that. I'm talking about actually having some type of learning by doing, learning by through that working out loud approach. So I think it can be, I think we just have to start at a very foundational level. And it has to be the responsibility of every single one of us.
Okay.
So that means our corporate programs, our enterprises, our schools. We need to think about how digital data literacy factors into every single job role.
Okay.
Every
So let's
single
talk about
individual
that.
role.
Let's talk about that as a starting point. That's a good starting point because it actually removes the fact that whether or not somebody was raised digital or not, and whether anything else, but you're actually, addressing from the early stages the digital literacy necessary to succeed at a bigger level, right? I mean, marketplace, workplace, doesn't matter essentially, So then, how do you address the digital literacy and learning at an early stage? And which, by the way, I'm pretty sure that if you ask me, I would say we're failing dramatically at that. But I don't want to bias your statement. But how do I address?
I mean, my research over the last several years has been looking at digital data maturity as a proxy for overarching digital maturity, and I can tell you right now, we are failing pretty miserably when it comes to digital data literacy. I do think it needs to be built in. It needs to be built into what you're doing on an everyday basis. So whether you are how does it work within your everyday tasks? When you are building out a new project, what does that actually mean? And it's not just, okay, well, what if my project has nothing to do with data? Well, how exactly are you going to document that project? How are you documenting your learning? That's data exhaust in and of itself. And so figuring out ways in which to build in this really snackable learning, but doing it almost by stealth, in that it's teaching people how to work out loud, teaching people how to learn out loud. And by doing so, you're giving them the digital data literacy skills, or you're starting to build those skills at the most basic fundamental level.
What are those skills?
Well, I think there's a combination of, skills. So I think you've got, and I think it's very hard. Well, I think you have to think about, you can't think about skills as like individual skills, but as skill combinations. So like just because you know how to operate a specific platform doesn't necessarily mean that because you've got those technical skills, you have the emotional intelligence to be able to communicate and collaborate on said platform. So there are all of these different skill combinations that we have to recognize. We can't just teach Excel, we can't just teach, how to use Chat GPT. It's about how we are using that digital, maybe technical skill, pairing it with business skills and emotional skills to get a desired output or outcome.
Okay. And how do we do that?
Well,
I'm smiling, so you have to answer the question now.
Well, it can't be with the training programs that we have in place. And we have to recognize that the training that we're doing is not just, it's something that we're carrying with us from one job to another. So being able to port our understanding and application of skills is needs to, it's part of our identity. It's part of what moves us forward. And those skills also change and flex depending on different contexts and conditions. So there's like, just because you might technically be great at something, there might be a different component of that skill combination that changes when you go into a different work environment. And so how are you adapting and adopting those skills to work within that, that context change? So it has to happen on an everyday basis. It needs to happen. It needs to be part of your everyday skill building. I don't think that we can sit there and identify every single skill combination, but I think it starts with the organization defining what skill combinations are going to get us to X, or are going to help us progress together in a certain direction. Or how do we show that there is some type of learning path or growth or evolution, or maybe we don't even know the path, but we're charting the path together. So I don't think it's like just this cut and paste model from organization to organization. And it's not something that can be done in a traditional training program. It's something that, the sense making that needs to happen with people that are going along for some type of time-bound journey where they're making progress together step by step. And there are going to be seasons or cycles of that change or learning. And so you as the organization, you as that person that is, working with this in this team, need to have an understanding of those individual and those organizational components, and having an understanding of how this is feeding the organizational memory.
Okay. So we got about a couple minutes left. So let me see if I can rescue this disaster that I created here. The whole idea was to get to this point, but I'm gonna go a little too deep into the rabbit hole there for a second. So basically, it's like, my kids are right. It's about the person, not about the job. The job doesn't matter. The job is easy. It's the person that makes the job, right? If you, like you said, you have skills and training that continue to grow, and that's what you bring from place to place. It's not like you're just an expert at this. You're a person that has this method collective of learning and teaching. Yeah, collective learning. There you go. And then and then we have to take the responsibility for teaching. I love that comment. You can put it up, Brent, if you want. So you have the responsibility. By the way, if you don't know why, because before he said that, there's a comment earlier where he said that he was told that in life he had to learn or die. So now it's machine learn or die. So that's very cool. But the way learning changes going forward is not the way computers change or interpret learning, which in my opinion, it's impossible to teach a computer how to learn since we don't know how we learn. But to become more aware of the tools, which is the computer and AI are basically tools, and then see how we can actually take what we're doing and interpret it, translate it to a machine level, a machine world, where they actually will take it and quote unquote pseudo learn, or whatever term you want to use for that, right? I think there's a significant difference between machine learning and human cognition, and
yes.
Neither one can be replicated, because we cannot process information at the speed of a computer, and they cannot learn the way we learn, right?
Yes.
So then that's the biggest challenge then going forward, is how to actually bridge that barrier between human cognition and machine learning. Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's being interested in what that space in between looks like. How many people are? Or do they want to just be spoon-fed information? And I think that's...
So this was part of my learning process, by the way. I mean, I had no idea what to do going into this show, because I didn't know where I stood, but you made a lot of things more clear for me. And I learned that there's two different concepts, which are human cognition and machine learning, that need to be applied differently. Seriously. I always assume that we're trying to teach computers how to learn like humans, but the reality is not. Machines learn on their own based on their own processes, and humans' cognition learn on their own based on their own processes. And there's no interface between the two of them, much to the chagrin of Elon Musk and Neuralink. There's no interface between the two of them. There's no interrelation between the two of them. One happens and one influences the other.
Correct.
That's a great summary for the last 45, 50 minutes of muddling everybody's brain, trying to figure out where I'm going.
Have a full, philosophical discussion about education, about learning.
Which is what I wanted, which is fine. And if you don't like it, tough shit. Get your own show, you know. So, there's
Okay.
plenty of places you can go get your own fucking show. Like my show, we talk about the things I want to talk about, and this is what I wanted to do. So thank you. And you know, it's always the last question. It's like, what haven't I what haven't I asked? What haven't I embraced, approached, breached? Pick a word. What haven't we discussed about learning in this new age?
Okay, so I'll ask you a question that I asked, I think, last time, but like just to flip a bit.
Yeah.
What fictional stories, doesn't have to be science fiction, what fictional stories do you think embody or illustrate the learning process in the best way?
What fictional stories illustrate the learning process in the best way? God, I fucking suck at these things. This is why I ask the questions, not provide the answers.
You know, I always bring things back to books, so.
And well, you read books. I don't read books anymore. I mean, I have fucking books everywhere. I just don't read it.
It could be a classic. It doesn't have to be something new. It could be something that made an impression.
Well, I'm gonna go for the easy answer then. I mean, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's the simplest answer in the universe. It's like, I mean, what, trillions of years to figure out the answer to like life, the universe, and everything, right? And that's just a learning process. And actually, that's actually not a bad answer now that I think about it. Like, well done. Because after all the trillion of years and having the answer being 42, the next question becomes, shit, I don't know what that means. What does it mean? And then he goes back into the process. And there's no better illustration of learning than the fact that he never gets to an answer, but it's just one more iteration in the process of where we're going.
Perfect.
I can't fucking believe I rescued that one. I thought I was going to go for something really bad.
Brilliant. That was brilliant. No, you did that.
It was pretty well set up. Thank you. I appreciate that. I can say, thanks for texting me the answer in the background. I appreciate that. Oh yeah. To me, this was fantastic and a fascinating hour of discussing somebody with another smart person. To some of you, we're halfway through, or like, I don't know where the fuck this is going, and I'm out. Come back because it was actually worth it. Totally. This is actually better than I expected, to be honest, not because of you, but because of me. I had no idea where to go with this. And we got somewhere interesting, which is human cognition, machine learning, different worlds. Let's figure out what we do going forward. So anyways, my guest today, as always, I run out of adjectives for you. Amazing, Yes, that's what I said, Brent. It was better because of me, always. It was better because of Lauren. It was worse because of me, but Lauren actually rescued by playing along. So my guest today, the incredible, amazing, fascinating, everything out of the ordinary, tricky adjective, Dr. Lauren Vargas, who actually played along in a question that went way too far down the fucking rabbit hole. And rescued to come back to the differences machine learning and human cognition, which I love the concept and will investigate further in other shows. Come back next week to talk about something way less horrible, which is vendor locking, which has an actual definition and resolution with Liz Miller. It has a resolution. Well, it's easier to get to a resolution than it is to get in human learning. So, And thank you very much for whoever's left out there listening at this. Thanks to Brent for playing along. And obviously, as always, thank you very much, Lauren, for coming along, playing along. And we'll see you next week.